Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matti and Shrikant.
Hello. So welcome to the last session of the conference. And a quick show of hand, how many of you have actually used the Excel add-in? Okay, so quite a few. That's nice. We are here to talk about the Excel add-in and demystify a few of the things that goes on underneath it. And with me is my colleague Matti Nielsen, and my name is Shrikant Vinchurkar. I am working at Microsoft in the server team in Business Central, and I'm working on the mostly backend functionality, which is going into the Excel add-in functionality. And I will let Matti introduce himself.
Yeah, so I'm Matti Nielsen, and I'm also working for Microsoft, and I'm working in the team Connected Experiences, and we mostly work with integrations like Teams and Outlook and Copilot and Excel in this case.
Yeah. So the agenda for today is we are going to talk what's so interesting about Excel add-in, why we are going to talk about it, and what do we want you to know, what things are going underneath it, what things are going under the hood. Then we are touching upon a little bit of architecture of how the functionality works end to end. Matt is going to do a demo with some Copilot in Excel functionality shown as well. And then we'll do a technical deep dive into how the add-in works and how the underlying web services are supporting this functionality. And finally, I think we'll have some time for the questions. So let's talk about what's so interesting about Excel add-in and why we are talking about it. So Excel, do you know that it is the most used integration in Business Central? It has now more than 100,000, and many users use it, which is very fascinating. What it allows you to do is to do seamless data editing between Excel and Business Central. So it's like a two-way sync that goes on between Excel and Business Central. It also allows you to use some of the Excel tricks that you have, some of the Excel knowledge that you have, and the changes you can make in either of the part, they are synced together. So it gives you an ability to use your Excel knowledge to do changes to the data in Business Central. And it also supports multi-company and multi-environment workflows. So in the Excel add-in, you can actually change the company, you can change the environment, and I think that's very convenient when you want to deal with data between different companies and different environments, right? Let's touch upon the architecture a little bit. So it all starts in the browser, where you click upon the Edit in Excel action on a list page. When you do that, it opens an Excel workbook with Dynamics Office add-in embedded inside it. And that add-in is the Excel add-in. So at this point of time, it tries to initialize itself. And it basically calls a Business Central service to get some configuration. That configuration includes things which are very specific to Business Central and which allows the add-in to target a particular environment. And mind well that the add-in actually is a common add-in. It's an Excel add-in is a common add-in which is shared across multiple different Microsoft products like finance and operations. Business Central use the same add-in, but it is the configuration which makes it very specific to the Business Central scenarios and to the changes to the data that you want to do. So once the call goes to the service in SaaS, the Excel add-in provider service, it goes to the environment and it retrieves the information about your tenant, like what environments it has, what companies it has, and then this information is passed back to the add-in. Once the information is passed back, the add-in makes the call to get the OData metadata. Now, once the metadata is available to the add-in, this is what tells the add-in to map the columns in the entity to the columns in the Excel. So at this point of time, the metadata is the one that is responsible for making a connection between the entity and the properties to the columns in the Excel add-in that you see. And once you have that binding, then you can do operations. Then you can do a get operation, you can do a post operation, you can do delete, update, and so on. So this is how it looks from front end to back end. And these are things that are going on under the hood. So now Matti will do a demo of how the add-in works, and we'll show you some of the functionalities that you might not know about, might not seen. So over to you, Matti.
Yes. So everything starts in Business Central. And as we saw in the diagram, we're going to click Edit in Excel. And the page I've chosen for this demo is the items page. And so what we're going to do first is just apply a filter, because we want to show that the filters, they also carry over from Business Central into the Excel add-in. So let's say that we filter on just all of the ones that start with 19 in the number series. And we click Edit in Excel. And then it downloads the workbook that we saw in the diagram. So I've cheated a little bit, and I've already downloaded a workbook that I have open over here, but it's going to look exactly like this if you open the other one. And so let's go through some of the basic functionality first. Let's say that we want to create a new item in this sheet. So what you can do is you can go into the design pane, and you can look at the table. So this is the data source information, and you can see which one is the primary key of the items page. In this case, we can see that number is the primary key. So let's take a number from one of the other ones, and we'll change it a bit to something that doesn't exist in BC. We'll change it to 10. And the description, it doesn't really matter, but it's nice to have. And we'll just take one from the one above. And we'll go back to the add-in, and we'll publish this. So now what happens in the background is that we make an OData call to Business Central that inserts this record, and we see it was successful. So one of the other things that you can do is that you can also delete this row that we just created, of course. And it's simply just like deleting the row in Excel, and you can publish that. And then the add-in is going to give us a warning that we're going to be deleting a row when we do this. Okay, let's refresh one time to just get all of the e-tags on the OData endpoint completely refreshed. So it was this one that I created, 1910. And let's delete this one and publish. And this one should also be gone from Business Central now. And if after the creation, if you went to BC, you would be able to see the row, and after the deletion, it has disappeared in BC. So this is one of the really powerful things about that, and that basically everybody, like all of the accountants that doesn't work with Business Central, usually they know how to edit an Excel sheet, and they can update all of the data. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a popular integration. So one of the things that I've done in this tenant is that I've installed an extension with the sales forecast. So I thought it would be fun to do some kind of forecasting of how many of these items are we actually going to sell in 2026, for example. And I have the forecast data here. And what I filled out is all of the line numbers, which corresponds to the items. And then I've just done some random number that we sold in 2023 and 2025. And then I wanted to try to use Excel Copilot to give us a forecast for 2025. And I've already prepared a prompt, and it's exactly what I just said. So let's see if Excel Copilot can help us with this. So hopefully what it does is that it gives us a column that we can just insert, but sometimes it gives you a formula that you have to apply as well, but I hope that's not the case this time. Let's see. Okay, so we're lucky. It actually does give us the column. And what I can do is I can take all of this, and I can insert it into a column that I've added myself through an extension, and I'll just copy this in here. And I'll go back to the add-in, and I can publish this. So this shows one of the ways that people who are very comfortable with Excel, they can use new Copilot, they can integrate it with Business Central even. So one of the things that we notice here is that some of the sales forecast is set to 0. And I'll just show you the code for the extension here. And I've just have a normal page extension where I've added a field, sales forecast. And I also have a table field, and it's an integer. And then I added some onValidate method. And what it basically says is that if the client type is OData v4, then if the sales forecast is less than 50, then just set it equal to 0. And it's just some arbitrary logic, because I wanted to show that even when you do this through Excel, all of the normal business logic is still being executed if you do it like this. So you can support all of the customer use cases like this if they want special behavior for Excel. Let's go back to the add-in. So one of the other things that I wanted to show is that we have this options dialog in the add-in. And one of the things you can do is you can change the language. And the language there actually corresponds to the language inside of my settings. So it supports localization. And you can also change around the environments. We have currently selected production environment, but you can easily, without reloading the add-in, change environments and companies to support that use case. So what I thought now was, let's try to go under the hood. So this is just a normal Office add-in. Anyone could actually go and develop an Office add-in. And one of the things that we can do to go under the hood is that we can change this Excel file to a zip file. And when you do that with Excel files, you can actually see what's underneath, like what's embedded in the workbook that we export from Business Central. And one of the interesting things is this Excel folder. And inside of that one, we have web extensions. And we have task panes. So this is the one of the things that does that. It seamlessly opens a task pane when the user opens the workbook. And then it's going to load the extension specified in this file, web extensions. And we can see that we are loading an add-in with an ID WA104. And this actually corresponds to the ID of the Microsoft Dynamics Office add-in in the Office store. And then we can see that we are seeding a lot of properties from Business Central. And some of the values that we recognize here is, for example, the company down here, and the production environment, and the language that I just showed in the Office tab. So there's really nothing magical going on in the background. Yeah, I think that's it for the demo.
Do you also wanted to show the changes to companies and environments that you can do from the workbook?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
It's okay. All right, so let's shift back to the presentation. All right, so the next slide.
Yeah, so this is the add-in Excel module, and we're hosting it publicly on GitHub, so anyone can see the active development going on in the module, and anyone can contribute as well. This is some of the pull requests of all of the latest development going on. And I added one of my pull requests that is like in a draft mode, and one of the partners, Steven Sosek, I hope he doesn't mind that I mention him, but he's reviewing my pull requests when I open them for the add-in Excel module. So it's so nice to see that all of the partners are also contributing to making this module better. And okay, and then to something else. So how can we extend the functionality in this add-in by using AL extensions? So some of the things that we need to keep in mind is that when we send a web request through OData, and the API is backed by a page, then all of the normal triggers is actually going to be executed just as if you had a UI interaction, just like if you visited the web client. And so all of this logic is going to be executed, all of the complicated business logic. And then we can also distinguish between what client is accessing your extension. So if you have some code in your extension and you only want it to run through the API, then you could, for example, distinguish based on the current client type to make sure that you're not doing a lot of UI stuff in these triggers to enhance the performance of the add-in. And then sometimes you have a page, like a worksheet page, for example, that doesn't have the Add in Excel button. We only add it by default to some specific pages, like the list page. And so this code that I've added, it's like a helper function to add in Excel action to a worksheet page. And what you basically do is you take dependency on the in Excel code unit, and you take dependency on the code unit for the filters. And then you can add fields, and these fields that you're adding here in the filters, it basically corresponds to the filter section of the add-in exactly. So this is, in this example, because it's a worksheet page, it makes sense to filter based on the batch name and the template name. So you don't just dump all of the data into the Excel sheet for the customer. And then eventually you'll call the edit page in Excel, and you also give in like what is the page ID that I want to base the web service based on that the add-in is going to connect to. Yes.
All right. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the backend functionality, how the OData web services are supporting this functionality in total. So starting from the like the start, these are the integrations that Business Central supports. Like any web service that you want to, any integration that we want to have with Business Central can be supported with these three technologies. One is REST API, another is OData, and third one is SOAP. Now, as most of you should know, that SOAP is on its way to depreciation. And REST API and OData is the one which we recommend using. Out of that, Excel add-in uses OData. So we'll talk a little bit more about OData and some more details about it. So OData web services in Business Central have been there for some time, but just like a primer, OData is an application level protocol which builds on top of RESTful API interfaces. It can perform CRUD operations for your data in Business Central, and you can expose your objects like pages, queries, code units as OData endpoints, and then interact with them. And it has support for standard OData operators like filter, top, etc. And most importantly, it also supports operators like batch, which is important when you are posting in bulk, like when you're doing updates in bulk or deletes in bulk. This is the operator that makes it more performant. And along with batch operator, if you do some combine other operators, then it will basically be very targeted. These operators are passed to the server, and then server is what takes care of making sure that it is a performant operation. And I can explain a little bit more about that. So the documentation, you can find it on this link about OData services. Now, what happens when Excel add-in is doing stuff on the UI? When you have an Excel add-in and you are clicking a refresh button, it actually makes a get call to the Business Central environment to retrieve the data. And when you're doing a publish, it makes a post call, right? And that post call is actually a batch call, which can do updates, deletes, etc. So let me show you a little bit of demo about this OData calls. So this is my environment. Let me just refresh it. Okay, let me start Fiddler. So let's start from the place where Matti demoed some of the functionality. So I'm going to the items page as well. And then I'm going to just open this page in Excel. So while the workbook is opening and the Excel add-in is initializing, it is doing all those stuff that I mentioned on the architecture slide. So it is contacting the Business Central service to get the configuration. It is then contacting, getting the environments, getting the tenants, and then basically trying to initialize everything so you can support a particular environment with this particular add-in. And at this point of time, it has loaded the data. So let's see if we can find the calls that the add-in has made in the background. And we found those calls. So we start with the metadata call. The first call is to get the metadata that I explained in the architecture diagram. So at this point of time, the metadata helps it to map from entities to the columns, right? And then it ends up in getting the get call to an entity called item card Excel. So this looks like a web service to me. Let's go and find out if we have that in our environment. So I will go to web services. And in the list of web services, I have this web service, which is item_card_Excel. So when you are using edit in Excel functionality, web service is created out of the box for you to work with Excel. And you can use the same web service to do a bunch of other stuffs. So I'm just looking at the API. It is item card Excel. So let me go to a tool like Insomnia. And if I use the same endpoint to make a call to Business Central, it is this item card Excel. It should give me the data. This data was used to load the Excel workbook, right? And basically, this is how it works. So you can also use the same web service to make post calls and other type of operations, normal OData operations you want to do. While we are at it, I want to show and tell you more about OData metadata, because it's essential to have a little bit of understanding of how it works. So OData metadata is can be retrieved while an endpoint called $metadata. Once you retrieve the metadata, it will show up as an kind of XML structure, right? And this is the EDM model. This is the entity data model that defines the metadata. You can see some entities like media. Then you can also see some entities like company, and they also have properties associated with those entities. And going back to talking about metadata, it is represented as EDM model, and to query the metadata document, you have to go to this endpoint, and it's a representation of service data model, which is exposed for client consumption. So client can be anything. In this case, our client is Excel but it can be any other client, and it looks like this. So I just showed you. It has entities and properties. And I want to dig a little deeper into how this metadata model is actually generated. So when you call this endpoint at the Business Central environment, if we don't have that model, we try to generate it the first time, and then we cache it, obviously. We don't want to generate it. It's an expensive operation. We don't want to generate it every time. But while we are generating the metadata model, it starts with adding some of the default companies, like company entity, and some properties for the company entity. Then it adds media entity and add media properties, right? So these are two entities which are added by default. Now it goes and adds one of the web service entities that are coming out of the box, like sales order. So when you log into your Business Central environment, you see some web services are already there, right? Some of the web services are out of the box, like sales order, and it adds the properties for that sales order entity. Now, when you are opening a list page in Edit in Excel, it tries to add the entity for that particular list page or that particular entity, right? In our example, it is item card Excel, and then it also adds the properties for item card. When these entities are being added to the metadata model, mind you that if there is an error while you're trying to add the entity, then that entity is not available in the model. So model has a list of entities. Only the entity where the problem occurred is not available in the model, but rest of the entities are there. So all your web services will keep on continuing to work as you expect, but if there is a problem in generating metadata for one of the entity, it will not be there, and you will not be able to call any web services for that entity. So why am I telling you about this? Some of the common pitfalls that we have seen in Edit in Excel functionality is customers try to open a page in Edit in Excel, and for some reason they say that this metadata is not there. And they get a screen like this. The error is this error box, error loading metadata. This entity was not found or could not be retrieved or something like that. And this is most common pitfall that we have seen. And why it happens is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there was a problem while you were adding the entity in the metadata model. And in most cases, the reason is you have an extension where the property name of some page, it actually conflicts with the property name mentioned in the base page. So if you get such an error, go ahead and check your extensions if there is a conflict or not, because due to the conflict, the entity was not added to the list of entities in the model, and that's why your web service is not working. That's why your Edit in Excel functionality is not working. This is one of the biggest sources of tickets that we have. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And there is one more thing which Matti wants to talk about.
Yeah, so let's say that we, for example, have a trigger like on modify record. So let's say that you update 10,000 rows in the Excel add-in. Then this trigger is going to run for each of those rows. And let's say that you have X amount of SQL calls inside of a trigger like this. Then it's going to be 10,000 times X amount of SQL calls. And all of these small SQL calls inside of the trigger is all going to the database individually. Like there's no way to optimize that kind of a performance. So if you have code like this, and it's necessary for the application to work, then you would need some kind of workaround where you tell the end user to filter out a lot so you don't update that many rows at a time, for example. Or if it's only necessary for the UI to have this trigger, then you could use some of the things I showed earlier to filter out based on the client, right?
Yes, and these are the links which tell you about known limitations in metadata generation, and it might be a helpful resource to find out some errors in Edit in Excel and some other links related to troubleshooting web services. So while we are talking about OData web services and while we are talking about Edit in Excel, it's also important to mention that about other types of APIs that Business Central supports. You remember the diagram that I showed? There are three possible technologies that you can use to integrate with Business Central. One is REST API, another is OData, and third is SOAP. So SOAP is on its way to depreciation. Let's talk about OData versus REST APIs. Now, when you want to do a new integration, we always recommend that you use REST APIs. REST APIs are available through API pages, and they are tailored for performance. So if you have a new integration coming up, do use REST APIs. And on top of that, the REST APIs are built under the hood also as an OData model. So you can also retrieve the metadata for the REST APIs that you have in the Business Central, and which also means that it supports all the OData operators like filter, top, batch, etc., etc. So I would say that REST APIs are recommended for new integrations, and for very specific logic which is very tied to your page, then you have to use the OData. Another important thing to notice is when you use OData web service, which is tied to the page, it also executes the triggers on the page. So if you have some triggers which are not essential for any kind of integration that you are having, then the trigger is getting executed unnecessarily, and which leads to slower loading of data in Edit in Excel and other scenarios. There is a way around which you can use in your pages, like in your extensions. You can probably use client type as OData v4, and then it can just filter out the logic only for client type UI or client type OData v4. So you can use that trick, but importantly, you have to be mindful that when a web service is tied to a page, the triggers on the pages are also getting executed. So that was our content. That was what we wanted to show. Feel free to contact us here, and this is a small link with all the integrations that are possible with Business Central through Office. Do check out the video on that link as well. Thank you. And it's time for questions.
We have a question over there.
Yes.
So you showed that we can edit and delete data from Excel in Business Central. How does the Control-Z function work? So if you make a mistake or you want to go back, does it recreate?
Sorry, can you talk a little bit louder? Just.
So if you delete a record in Excel from BC,
Yeah,
and you press Control-Z, does it automatically recreate it, or?
yeah, you can get it back like that. But if you, for example, delete it in Business Central and then you close down the workbook, then it's gone, right?
Okay.
So it's a very fragile way of doing it.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
If I understand it correctly, then you're technically creating tenant web service for communication, but aren't OData tenant web service for Microsoft pages deprecated? Or is this a
No, SOAP is getting.
explanation that you are still allowed to create it with your
Yes,
integration?
the OData web services, you are allowed to create it, but it is not deprecated. SOAP is on its way to depreciation. But recommendation is to use REST APIs.
Know what I mean? I thought a few weeks ago they mentioned you won't be able to publish a tenant web service for a Microsoft page or for a page that is contained in an app with the publisher Microsoft. But or how do you handle this?
I don't think that the OData web services is getting deprecated anytime soon.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
No, not the OData web service. I think it's a setup. There is an error in the system app when you will add in BC 29 or so, or when you try to insert a tenant web service for a page that is part of Microsoft app.
If you send us an email, we will definitely look into it.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it.
We haven't seen it.
Do
Sorry.
send me an email.
Yeah.
If you if you come across something.
Sorry. Okay. If you update the data from Excel, is everything updated or only the columns you changed?
Yeah, so it tries to only update the one row that you're updating. So it knows how to optimize it in that sense.
Okay, and one more thing, when we enabled it for a customer, they went to the app source and found the app, but on the page of the app, there's only mentioned you need OData service for Dynamics AX. No word about Business Central, so they were a little bit confused.
Yeah, but that's maybe
Sent them the wrong link.
yeah. So the add-in is also used by other products, so that might be why the Office add-in on the page is not mentioning anything about Business Central.
Okay, but we could add a mention for Business Central.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? You have it.
So if I create a new table, we can call it supercars, and I want now my customers to basically edit the data in Excel. So I need to create an OData or REST API on the page. Nothing.
No, it will all happen automatically. Like, let's say that you have a card page and you have a list page that points to the card page. Then the list page by default will have the editing Excel action up at the top.
Okay, and the connector on the side will be also updated.
Yeah. So it creates the web service automatically every time if it doesn't exist. Yeah.
All right. Any more questions? Yes.
All the way up there. You can throw it, Shrikant.
All the way there? Okay.
Thank you. It's not a technical related question, but eventually you can open Excel again and show us the add-in, because in real life, if you work with the add-in and you did a lot of changes, it occurs that if you put the data back into the worksheet, some error occurs, and then you got the error log on the right side of Excel, and you can have a closer look on it. And based on the usability, it happens very often that you close the full add-in instead of the error log. And after that, it's very hard to handle to open the add-in again. And if it's possible, it seems to be that the connection is lost and you can't still continue inside of the spreadsheet. So can you close the add-in?
Yeah, so you're saying if I click the exit up here, yeah.
So now try to open it again. So and it's based on the user experience. Here it works because in a demo environment, mostly the time it works, but in a real life environment, it's happens very often that the connection is lost. Is there a reason for that? And how can I just re-authenticate instead of just closing the spreadsheet and start it again?
Yeah, it's very hard to answer because I haven't seen that error, actually.
Okay, so you just need a screenshot and an email, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
That
That would help a lot. Thank you.
One more. Since a couple of months now, sometimes it appears, depending on your regional settings, that if you just put data into an amount field of a worksheet, push it back to Business Central, that depending on different regional settings, Business Central updated the amount field with a different amount that you have pushed to Business Central. It seems to be based on, I don't know, the point or the comma, so the separator of the 1000 formatting.
Okay.
Do you know something about that?
It's very hard with localization in these add-ins to make it work across. We support the languages, yeah. So it's very hard when when different regions they represent it either with a dot or a comma. How that works exactly?
But I mean, it was in German environment, it was in German add-in, and it works for a very long time. And then there was an update, and then it didn't. So
Okay.
I mean, for the user, the problem is if you only have 1 or 2 lines.
Yeah.
I mean, it works and you can see it immediately. But if you push, I don't know, 20 or 100 lines to the worksheet, you have to go through, and it is something like an incoming statement. It doesn't really help you to work more efficient. So push the data back from Excel instead of just enter it manually. So eventually, it's something you can close a look on it. And
yeah, maybe an email would be good for that one as well.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what happens with email?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome. All right. Any more last questions? I think then that's it. Thank you.
There's one more question down here.
If you check out the Excel and make changes, and in the meantime someone changed the data in BC, and you try to publish it again, you get a message you need to reload it. But if you reload it, you lose all your changes. Is there any option to keep my changes, at least for the items that were not changed in Business Central?
No, we don't have that. So I would suggest opening a separate workbook, even though it's kind of a hassle as well, obviously. And it's just because it's based on a model where we try not to overwrite data that someone else has changed, right? And then this is how we represent it with the error. But yeah.
Yeah, right now there is no better way. Yes.
So at least it doesn't, like when you click publish and you've made changes and someone else have changed it, at least it doesn't remove and refresh so you lose everything immediately. That would be even worse, right?
Yes. This is
at least you still have the changes that you made somewhere. So I would probably suggest a new workbook for that. But we don't have anything on the drawing board. I haven't even thought about it, actually. So, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So, any more questions? Okay, thank you very
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
attending the session.
Thank you.